The gospel text of today, taken from chapter 7 and different verses in that chapter, makes 3 points. The first is, it talks about lip service versus heart service. The second, it tells us that there is nothing from outside which enters us that makes us unclean. And third, it tells us that every kind of uncleanness comes from within. Chapter 7 begins by Jesus talking with the people about the 2 kinds of worship that one can do. One is lip service, where I am singing God's praises, where I am extolling God, where I am singing songs, where I am celebrating in words. And that is good, and that is required, and that must be done. However, if my worship of God remains only at that level, it is sterile, it is of no use whatever, because my lip service of God, my lip worship of God, my worship with my tongue of God must also be translated into what Jesus would call heart service, and what James in the second reading of today says very clearly is helping orphans, reaching out to widows, and not being contaminated by the world. So for James, true religion, for Jesus, heart worship is the same thing. How do I practice my religion? I can practice my religion by going to a place of worship. And in these last few months we have seen, we have practiced our religion so beautifully, even though we were unable to go physically to places of worship. We have learned a new way of practicing our religion in the confines of our home. Our home has become the church. Our home has become the temple. Our home has become the mosque. Our home has become the Gurudwara. Our home has become our place of worship, and that is the way it must be. However, there are many of us who have not restricted ourselves to worshipping God in words, but we have reached out of ourselves, even at very great risk to ourselves at the time of this pandemic, to show that we are concerned about orphans and widows who are merely metaphors for those who need our help. They are the marginalized, the poor, those who do not have sufficient food to eat, who cannot count on the next meal, who do not know where it is coming from. We have done that, and so our worship is heart worship as well. There are times when we blame the external situation or the another person for my behavior. So very often we say, you made me angry, or you irritated me. Now that is what children do. Sometimes I try this exercise. When I visit a person's home and they have a small child, this is of course before COVID-19, and the child would come crawling to me, and the child on its way to me would possibly bang the head or the knee on a piece of furniture. What I would do is lift the child up in my arms, and I would berate that piece of furniture, whether it was a table or a chair. I would give one smack to the table or chair saying, you beat my baby. The child would stop crying. Notice? The pain is in the knee or in the head, but I have not touched the knee, I have not touched the head, I have touched the table, which has not really caused the pain at all. And I have berated the table, I have shouted at the table, the child stops crying. So from the very young age, we are teaching children, and we keep thinking wrongly that the pain is outside of me and caused by the table. No, the pain is caused by your carelessness. The table is what the table is. The table is where the table is. Your carelessness, your lack of looking has caused the pain and the bang. And so Realize that it is within you. And this is what Jesus is asking us to do. Unfortunately. But we might do that with children to keep them quiet. We continue to think in the same way even as we grow, and we keep blaming others. We keep blaming the situation outside for the way we feel. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a pandemic which all of us are experiencing, and we notice the response to it has been different. Some have given into despair. Some have lost hope. Some have done all kinds of things to themselves, and yet others have been so outgoing in this pandemic. There are the healthcare workers, there are the doctors, there are the nurses, there are the policemen and women, there are the municipal workers, there are the drivers of public transport, and so many others who have not thought of themselves, but have thought of others and have responded so positively in their reaching out. So very clearly, it is not the external situation which determines, but my response which determines how I feel. And so today, I'm going to stop complaining. I'm going to stop blaming the situation or a person for the way I feel, and realize finally that my sin comes from within. Sin is not outside of me. My evil thoughts, my evil actions, my negative reactions, my negative way of thinking, my pessimism, all of that comes from within. And that is what defines. And so my service of God is not going to be merely a lip service, but a heart service in which I show in action that I believe in God by reaching out to the orphan, by reaching out to the widow, by reaching out to those in need. I'm going to stop blaming another person or the outside situation for the way I feel, and I'm going to realize that all of my sins come from within me. All of my sins come from within.